Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 331 of the Stacey West podcast. I'm Ben, and this week I'm joined by Chris. How you doing, mate? You keeping well?
Hello. Yes, very well indeed. No temptations to speak with a German accent tonight, you'd be pleased to know.
I was going to ask, have the auditions gone well for Hello, Hello?
Oh, if only I was old enough to understand that joke.
Oh, come on.
I'm joking, really.
You're saying that you don't know who Antonio Banderas is, and now you say you don't know what Hello, Hello is.
I didn't know who Antonio Banderas is. However, that's mainly because I'm really bad at knowing who any actor or actresses are. I don't know anybody. So that's the reason I didn't know who they were. Speaking of which, though, so I've been playing Football Manager this morning, and I am, of course, Victoria Cologne because I had to be after being and watching them at the weekend. Last weekend. I can't believe that's a week ago, by the way, since I was over there in Deutschland. But here we are, back in sunny old England, watching proper football at the weekend. But before we touch on that, how are you? Of course, you've just moved into your new abode, and I hear you've been doing the standard kind of DIY for the last God knows how long.
Yeah, no, it's going well. Everything's all done. I would like to make just a very quick shout out and a very big thanks to Chris Keneally, who did all of our wonderful floors. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see here they do look absolutely stunning. So yeah, if you need any flooring done, get in touch with Chris. He's fantastic. But yeah, no, we've been we got a rather large IKEA order delivered earlier in the week. I went to start putting it all together yesterday. Everything showed up. It was like, yep, cool. That's the right thing. Everything's right. The right color, the right name. Went to start building one of the wardrobes that we've got, and they have sent us Hobbit-sized wardrobes. They've completely sent us the wrong ones. So, yeah, we've got quite a few packages to go back, which has been rather irritating because we were hoping to get all that done this weekend.
Yeah, less than ideal. I appreciate this isn't very good for audio listeners, but for those of you on YouTube, I have to say, mate, your office is looking superb behind you, though.
Thank you.
So if nothing else, at least you've got the most important room in the house.
Absolutely. Yeah, got the important stuff done and all of the very important and grown-up collectible items on the shelf. Definitely not just Lego. It's all Lego. But look, enough about that and enough about what I should and maybe shouldn't have in my office. Let's get into talking about Lincoln City because that's what we're here for. So the week, well, obviously after the podcast on Wednesday night, Scubala's press conference went live and the question was asked about him of Tom Hamer. Said, what's the situation with Tom Hamer? And he came back with the answer that you never really want to have. It's going to be a couple of months. He's just had surgery. That was accompanied by a photo on Instagram, I believe, from his partner who tagged him in it. And he's got a big old boot on himself, hasn't he?
He has. Yeah, that's a real shame. Real shame, to be honest. I don't know how long he's going to be out for because Michael just said months, didn't he? I think he said a few months. So that could be, that's annoying because that could be 2 months. That could be 8. You don't know. So I'm really hoping it's obviously the smallest number of multiple months possible. But it's a real shame because obviously Jacko is much closer to coming back than Tom Hamer is, but he's still a few weeks away yet, which I think that means, of course, Lewis Montson's going to get everyone in the team, which the romantic in me loves, and I think all Leicester City fans would love to see that for Lewis as well as for the club. But we are actually looking a little bit light in that part of the pitch now. Yeah. And I think with Lewis's recent injuries, we need to kind of look after him. Ultimately Tendai played at right centre-back against Chesham because we didn't want to risk Lewis. And I think what Tom and Jacko have been able to provide along with Lewis is, just like we have every other part of the pitch, is real depth and strength in depth. And we're going to miss that a lot now. So that it works both ways as well, doesn't it? Because it works in multiple ways, because not only is it helpful for injuries, it's also helpful for form as well, and to keep kind of players on their toes, because I know there's someone there's someone kind of waiting in the wings to step in. I'm just seeing Andy pop in the chat there saying we do have Saxon early. We do. He is primarily a left back, can play left centre back. So I'll be really surprised to see him play on the right centre back. Again, Sean is number one in that position, isn't he? And he's brilliant, by the way. Sean once again had another great performance on Saturday. It's becoming standard now, really, isn't it? But I don't think he'd be anywhere near as effective if he was playing on the right-hand side of a three. It limits us, but we're fine. You know, and we can always got the option, of course, changing into playing a back four if we need to as well. But it's a real shame for Tom, first and foremost, to be out. It's a shame.
I think he was. It felt like he was just starting to come into himself a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, he was putting in some really good performances, and I think he was maybe not in danger of dislodging any of the main starters, obviously when they're all fit. But I think he was definitely showing what he was about and giving Michael something to think about. It's just a real shame. And of course, we're gonna miss his long throw because that's another weapon in the arsenal, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, it really is. And you know, set pieces are a real threat for us this season. We've scored 10 goals in the league so far from set pieces. That's the most out of anyone in League One. And that isn't just corners and free kicks, is it? That includes those throw-ins as well. And the thing is, his delivery off a throw it's as good as a corner, really, in terms of the trajectory. So, yeah, I agree. That's going to be a big miss. But we're going to have to, you know, as annoying as it is, as upsetting as it is, we're going to have to get on with it. And we're going to have to deal with it without him. But we do still have a back three capable of starting. Again, I don't want to put kind of pressure on players here, but I don't know how long it is until Jacko is back. So hopefully not too long. But MJ Kamara is doing really well out on loan at Peterborough Sports at the moment, albeit he is very young and of course playing a few in men's football. And he played a lot in pre-season. I don't know what the rules are in regard to recalling there. I imagine we'd have to wait until January to do that. And is that maybe jumping in at the deep end a little bit with MJ? But
yeah, I think if you did that, you'd potentially run the risk of essentially what happened with Jovan Makama in his early days. You know, when you bring him back, he's clearly not ready, and you're kind of putting him in there because we have to. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I mean, there was a moment which we will come to when we talk about the Bristol Rovers game, which did make everybody's, we were rabbit nostriling, shall we say, very briefly, for a couple of minutes there. But obviously not the most ideal of situations for Tom Hamer. We're obviously wishing him all the best and hope he can recover as quickly as he possibly can. But like you say, we've got Adam Jackson is on the fringes of coming back. By the sounds of it, he's a couple of weeks away. I think it was the thing that we noticed the most when we went up to the EPC was that he was training on his own and obviously trying to bring himself back to full fitness. So, not the most ideal of sorts.
Not ideal at all.
Defense to be in, is it?
No, it's not. But we do have a very, very strong starting back three as it stands. We saw against Chesham that Tendai can fill in there if required, and we've obviously got options at the wing back roles on both sides. So as good as Tendai is in that wing back role, we do have other options there if he had to fill in at centre back. So we'd be okay, but it would be square pegs, round holes until Jacko's back, really. But as it stands right now, we've got Sean, we've got Pordy, and we've got Lewis that are all performing really well. And isn't it lovely to see Lewis Montsma back in a Lincoln City shirt, playing week in, week out? That is, it's a joy to behold. So, one man's trash is another man's treasure, some say, isn't it? And one man's misfortune is someone else's opportunity. So, as much as it's a shame for Jacko and Hamer to be out, Lewis is now taking his opportunity to get in the team. And, he's going to be able to play a few weeks in a row now.
Yeah, well, that was kind of a nice little segue into, obviously, the lineup being announced for the game yesterday. And it was one of those where the defence was essentially what we expected, given the news, and then similar with midfield as well. Obviously, Ethan Arahan being out, you expect Conor McGrandles to be in, and then we obviously had Ethan Hamilton and Dom Jeffries in there as well, and then up top we have Freddie Draper. No, we didn't have Freddie Draper. Sorry, why did I say Freddie Draper? I don't know. We had Jovan Makama and Ben House starting. Draper was on the bench. That was where I was getting on that one. But Ben House and Jovan Makama starting. I think if at this point, I think it's fairly obvious that if Ben House is fit, he's starting. And then it's who slots in around him on those
Yeah.
in that extra spot.
Yeah, agreed. Though I think Jovan is probably the top of the pecking order for that at the moment. To be honest, all things being equal, I think Freddie definitely has his qualities. We know Bailey absolutely has his qualities as well, and there will be certain games in which they both start because or each of them will start ahead of maybe one of the other two because of the opposition. But I think all things being equal, I think it's actually relatively clear now that Michael's preferred front two is Jovan and Ben, because it's the first time for a few weeks that they've all been available and all been fully fit, and they're the two that started. But I will say it gives us a real threat off the bench with whoever comes on, because they will almost always both come on, whichever combination it is, and it really does add something as we saw yesterday.
Yeah, I think that was. It's becoming a bit of a line, isn't it, now, where every time we look at it, we just go, I think it was Stu mentioned it in the Discord chat. He said, "Oh, I know we say this every week, but what a bench. Like, it just looks strong." And again, similar to what we've said before about the starting lineup, you're not really that worried about who's going to be in it. It doesn't really matter who's on the bench either, because I think we've just got so many options available.
As long as Jack Morden's there somewhere, obviously, that's really that's pretty important at the moment.
Yeah, so I was fairly confident going in, but we didn't really get started for probably a good chunk of the first half, I think it's fair to say. There wasn't really too much to shout about for the first 10 15 minutes or so, but there was a chance for Jovan Makama. Ben House puts the ball across, and Jovan in a bit of a flashback to Gaza in Euro 96 kind of swings a boot at it, and if you watch it back, he slips. So he slips as he's going for it, and I think if he goes to put his left foot on it, I think that goes in. But when you watch it back, it's not a case of, he's planted his foot and he can just swing his boot at it. He just unfortunately slips at exactly the wrong moment and goes to put his right foot on it and misses it. So yeah, unfortunate. It looked like that could be something of a trigger to maybe start to get something out of the game, but it just didn't really pan out like that, did it?
Yeah, to be honest, the first half was a bit tame overall, I would say. I think a lot of us could be guilty. To be honest, I was in this boat yesterday. I think I'm more so when I'm watching online rather than in the ground. You can kind of you always obviously watch the game from your team's perspective, don't you? And as I've mentioned loads of times before, that the game's got two very different phases. You've either got the ball or you haven't, and a lot of us only ever really associate how well we've played according to what we do when we've got the ball. But as I think it's becoming quite a fixture of us under Michael Skubala, out of possession, we were really good. And actually, we were pretty good out of possession in the first half against Bristol Rovers. I will say it's easier to be good out of possession against Bristol Rovers, who are quite poor. I'll be honest, I was quite not disappointed with them, but I just really thought that on paper that their squad was better than their league position, yet the underlying numbers suggested they are in the right position. And in this instance, the league table doesn't lie at all, because I really thought they just didn't really have many real patterns.
No.
So sometimes that's down to us defending well or having a good setup to limit it. But I felt like they didn't have a way out too often. So as much as we were all right in the first half in terms of out of possession, and as much as we were probably the most threatening marginally in possession, we didn't really create a great deal. Like I say, that the ball went across the 6-yard box a couple of times. Jovan had that opportunity that he couldn't quite get his toe on, and there was another ball came flashing across the 6-yard box a few minutes later as well. And of course, there was Jovan's one-on-one, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a little bit more depth. But the overall picture of the first half was a little bit like, well, that's a 45 minutes that happened.
Yeah. It was the football happened around you, didn't it? There wasn't really too much going on. I just thought that. I mean, I will give a bit of credit to Bristol Rovers. I think they did enough to stop us doing what we wanted to do.
Yeah,
But they didn't have, and I think Matt Taylor even mentioned it in his interview after the fact. He said, that both teams were. He said there was two decent sides, but it felt like it was going to be a mistake, a moment of brilliance, or a set piece that decided the game ultimately. Because I think it felt like they would. It almost felt a bit like they were the away team in that they were trying to set up to stop us playing, and I think they managed to do that pretty well. At least in the first half, and then we'll touch on the second half in a little bit. But
yeah, I do think in the first half we were just a little bit sloppy in possession. Like I said, our possession we were all right, we were fine. I don't want to take that for granted because it's a given for us at the moment. But I think we really want to make sure we're not taking that out of possession kind of structure and solidity for granted, because it takes a lot of work and effort to be that solid. Because I know we went in a goal down. We're going to discuss that in a moment, but I didn't really feel like we were threatened very much at all in the first half, or in the second, really. So out of possession, I think that's at least just notice the fact that it was still good, and it has been for weeks and weeks and weeks. But in possession, it was a little bit sloppy at times. A couple of misplaced passes, a couple of things where it was just like a half a yard the wrong side or half a second too late. So it was kind of making the right decisions at times, but maybe just the execution wasn't quite there, which led to a bit of a dare I say dull first half. But there was a couple of talking points, wasn't there? So the first one I think we want to touch on is, of course, Bristol Rovers' goal, which came somewhat controversially, shall we say?
Yeah. So let's rewind 2 or 3 minutes first. So Joven's chasing after a ball that's heading back to the Bristol Rovers back line. He puts in a challenge that is robust, shall we say? Shoulder to shoulder. Comes away with the ball. The referee blows for a foul. In the moment, I didn't think that was a foul. I thought, oh come on, it's just a strong challenge. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, referee gives the foul. You don't think too much of it at the time.
Indeed.
2 minutes later, Rico Hackett's got the ball. Shaq Ford comes in and bundles him off the ball in a near identical manner. The referee doesn't blow. Shaq Ford then takes it forward and scores, let's take nothing away from the finish, an absolutely superb goal.
Yeah.
Curled it round into the bottom corner. Just a really, really smart finish. But the argument is there that should he have even been able to get the shot away?
Yeah, exactly. It was frustrating at the time, to be honest, because we always say we want consistency from referees, don't we? And referees often come back and say, yeah, but every incident is kind of unique. So we referee what we see. And I kind of get that, but you've literally got two near identical situations happening just minutes apart. And, you'd like to think that one decision would then inform the other. Because I'm completely with you. Obviously, with Lincoln City coloured spectacles on, Joven tackles the defender, and you think, that's a bit soft. But also, I completely understood why the free kick was given. I think that's one of those ones, if you've got a strict referee, because different referees interpret the rules differently. You do get some that are a little bit more picky and a little bit more strict, and some that let more things go. And I actually think Mr. Baines, the referee, he'd let quite a bit go in the opening exchanges of the game. He seemed quite happy to allow 50-50s to just kind of play out, which I was more than happy with. Didn't seem to be too picky, particularly in the first half. I thought, okay, he's letting things go. There was some robust challenges without requiring any real anything that was too kind of violent. It was just robustness, and I was all for that. So for that reason, it felt a bit soft for the free kick to be given against Joven, considering he'd let quite a few robust challenges go prior to that. But taking the rest of that context away in isolation, could I see why that's given as a foul? Yeah, of course you can. It's one of the things. Sometimes you get, sometimes you don't. fair enough, whatever. You kind of get on with the game. But then, as you mentioned, quite literally just 2 or 3 minutes later, near identical situation with Shaq Ford on Rico Hackett. And surely you use that as a way of justifying the decision. You give a free kick there, no one from either side complains about it. And I think that's the point, isn't it? No one from either side complains that that's not a foul, considering he's given a foul just 2 minutes beforehand. Yeah. So I was really quite upset about that at the moment, I have to say.
That's an understatement, Chris.
But as you rightly said, from that point, really good finish. It's difficult. We want to point somewhere, we want to blame somewhere as football fans, don't we? George Wickens can't get there. It's just a really good finish around him. I really would struggle to blame Rico Hackett because he's fouled in regards to, certainly in relation to what we just mentioned. It's just a really good finish. And as much as we're Lincoln fans and we want Lincoln to win, I think it's worth touching on that will be a real nice moment for Shaq Ford himself because he, of course, received some pretty horrendous racial abuse in recent weeks. So be a nice moment for him. To get a goal and to kind of silence some of those critics for him. Of course, that didn't help us out at the time, but I think it's worth mentioning. 1-0 down after not really conceding anything in regards to shots. That was their only shot on target in the whole game, actually. That was their only shot on target. And it was from 25 odd yards out. And it was a really good shot from target. Shot on target from range. But there was one more chance for us just after that. Jovan Makama was set through one-on-one off one of 14 clearances from Paudie O'Connor in the game, by the way. That's a ridiculous number. I think he was outstanding yesterday, by the way, Paudie O'Connor. Then Jovan found himself one-on-one. It somehow didn't go in. I don't know how it didn't quite go in, but we couldn't quite bundle it into the net.
Well, I think when you watch it in real time, you sort of look at it, you just go, oh, how's he missed that? How's that not gone in? And then when you look back at it, as he gets towards the edge of the box, it's really cute defending. There's an arm across his back. There's an arm on the shoulder. It just puts him off balance. Then you've got Josh Griffiths coming out as well. And he does get the shot off, but it just hits Griffiths straight in the midriff, comes back out to him. And then it all happens so quickly. It's a bit pinball-y, isn't it? And it doesn't quite land for him, and he can't get it in. And unfortunately, Ben House wasn't quite up with the play, as you wouldn't be if Jovan Makama's sprinting away from you.
Good point.
But unfortunately, there wasn't anybody else to follow up the rebound. I
think it's important. Just like, I don't ever want us to just be blindly kind of defending our own players because they're our players. Yeah, but it's absolutely right to point out that the ball just never really settled for him, did it? The defending was good. It was always kind of quite awkward for Jovan at no point from him getting away from the defence to him getting a shot away did he have a real clear opportunity to pull the trigger and pick his spot. It was always, he was always kind of obstructed in some way. So did well to get the shot away. Of course, on another day it would have gone in. Another thing just goes to show his threat, doesn't it? I think we do want to look at the positives a little bit. But I
mean, obviously, it's disappointing that he didn't score. On the other hand, do you think that with probably a bit more experience and a bit more nous in the dark arts, shall we say, if as soon as he feels that hand on his shoulder and as soon as he feels that just that little nudge, do you think if he goes down, he gets a penalty there?
Yeah, maybe so, or certainly just outside the box, he gets potentially a free kick and a red card. I think it's the run, isn't it? If your first part of your run goes across the defender, they've got two choices: they either bundle you over, or they have to stop their run. In which case, that gives you an extra yard space again. But I think it's really hard to criticise. Like, he's got him behind. His pace has got him away. He's got himself a yard, and he's got one thing on his mind, which is can I get a goal? And ultimately, not quite. Bristol Rovers escaped at that moment, and it was a rare flashpoint really in the first half. To be honest, a rare piece of excitement. As I mentioned, there was a couple of balls across the box. That was our only real proper opportunity. It was a key and a big chance. But I think I went in at half time, obviously a goal down, feeling relatively comfortable that we'll be able to get ourselves back into the game. Yeah, I wasn't actually really sure how. Sometimes you can see the patterns and you can see what we're trying, or you can see how the teams are lining up against each other, and you can see where the chances are going to come from. just felt that we had threatening players more so than they had, and also knew that we would grow into the game and didn't feel that they would as much. It was a shame to be a goal down, but I thought we could get back into the game. To be honest, I still thought we could win. But I think once you're a goal down away from home against anybody, you'll always take a point, won't you? Whether you see that as a good point or a bad point, I think you'll always take one if you're a goal down away from home at half time. But how did you feel going in at half time in terms of our second half chances?
So I felt a bit gutted. I mean, like you, I didn't feel... I felt that it was a bit harsh going in 1-0 down.
Yeah.
Like we say, it was the single moment of just brilliance from Ford that's put us 1-0 down. But at the same time, it's similar to what you've said there. I didn't feel we'd lose the game, but I didn't know how we wouldn't lose the game. That's a really bad way of putting it, I know, but it was... You couldn't necessarily think, right, this to this to this to this, and that's going to lead to a goal. You couldn't necessarily see it. But what we're going to do very quickly, actually, because we're on about 25, 26 minutes now, we're going to take a little break for some adverts on the audio and say hello to the folks that are watching on the YouTubes. And then we'll be back to discuss the second half and also look ahead to next week. So, see you in a sec.
See you in a sec. Right, I'm just going to very quickly go and blow my nose, Ben, because if not, I'll sneeze all over the screen. Back in a second, everybody.
No worries. There you go. The behind-the-scenes shenanigans that are when Chris needs to blow his nose. And he's back. There we go. I'm surprised you didn't do it like a footballer, just randomly just sort of turn around and snot it out.
Well, then but I've got to clean it up then, haven't I?
So yeah, let's just say hello to a couple of folks. We've got Harry Jackson's in. Good morning. Andy Brown is in. Hello. Harry also says, I think Moyne's coming in as purely tactical, fresh leg player that can make an impact. We will discuss that shortly. James says, hello, Chris.
Hello, Trig.
And then David says, good evening, up the imps. And he also says, wow, looks like you're setting into the new place. Impressive man cave. Technically, it's an office. If I called it a man cave, I would probably be shouted at. And then Andy says, what's happening with Rob Street? And Andy says, Street's injured, which I didn't know.
Not sure, in all honesty, not sure. I think at the moment he's just down the pecking order. He may well be injured and we're not aware of it. But I certainly think in regards to the striking options, he's 5th out of 5 that are available as it stands right now. That's not to say that's how it's going to stay, but you definitely don't need 3 strikers on the bench when you can only name 7 subs. So I think 2 is good. We don't need 3. So he's just missing out. As far as I'm aware, of course, he may well be injured.
Indeed. So cool. Right. Well, we will come back in a second. And there we go. Thank you to our sponsors for the week. Not sure, again, who they are. I don't know if Gaz has done any bespoke ads for us at the moment. It'll probably have some McDonald's ones coming soon. So I did see the other day, actually, something very, very worrying. I think it's next week. The Big Tasties back at McDonald's, which is... that's my Achilles heel when it comes to fast food, unfortunately. Yeah.
I don't even know what it involves. That's not me trying to be all high and mighty. I just don't know.
It's big. It's tasty. It's a big
Makes
tasty
sense.
burger. Yeah. But right. Okay. That's enough free ad for McDonald's. So let's move into the second half. So usually when we talk about the second half, when we've had a bit of a poor first half, we say, oh yeah, and it came back and it was, we exploded into life in the second half. We did all the right things, but it kind of felt like more of the same coming out for the second half. Like there wasn't you couldn't tell if they'd had the teacups rattled and a boot thrown at them in the dressing room. It just felt like, oh, okay, we're carrying on as we were then, are we? Didn't feel like we'd really gone for the impetus, did it?
Yeah, I agree. And I think the stats would say that as well. 1 shot each, 0 on target, a bit of huffing and puffing, but not really a lot a lot going on really in each box, which was honestly a little bit disappointing because at that point you're a goal down and you'd like to kind of push the game. I think maybe we was a little bit more high intensity in terms of tempo in possession, but yeah, not a lot really changed. In all honesty, first half should have been 0-0, shouldn't it? In terms of overall play, it was a bit of a freak goal. Good finish as mentioned, but yeah, not a lot really happened. So on my notes, I literally wrote 45 to 60, nothing happened. That's literally all I've written. And then, of course, Jack Mullen came on around.
Cometh the hour, cometh the man.
Indeed, yeah, he's really in form at the moment now, isn't it? So a couple of things to touch on here, I think, when it comes to Jack. Number one is the impact he had on the game, obviously the goal, but also I think there's a wider talking point here in regards to should he start or not?
Yeah. Now, there was a comment actually a little bit earlier on. Harry Jackson says, I think Moylan's coming on as purely tactical, a fresh-legged player that can make an impact. I agree with that, but you, as a player, I don't think you ever want to get labelled with, super sub. I think it's a dangerous thing to have on your back. And I think Jack Moylan was pretty clear in his frustrations after the game that he wasn't starting in his interview. But he did say, you can either what was the wording? You can't feel sorry for yourself when you don't start. You need to channel it and do the business on the pitch, which is absolutely the right attitude to have. And it's also the attitude that Skibala's spoken about many times this season, where he said, players, if they're not getting the opportunity to start, if they do come on, I want to see them make an impact and I want to see them change a game. And at that point, they're staking a claim for the shirt. So I think following on from that and using Skibala's own logic, it kind of makes sense for Jack Moylan to get a start soon.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting position to find ourselves in here, particularly for Jack, of course, because I'll be honest, I expected him to start this game, particularly after playing so well against Chesham and just been on really good form recently. He's a real threat. He's always a threat when he comes on, isn't he? And that's so from like a Lincoln City kind of meta perspective, like the bigger picture. Well, if he's such a threat when he comes on, and midfielders and defenders are tired, he comes on and he kind of runs at them, which is terrifying at any time, but particularly terrifying 70 minutes onwards when you're tired. Maybe on a booking at that point as well. There's a real kind of reason to bring him on at that point. Particularly when we are behind or when we need to kind of get a goal. I think he's a real impact player, and there's no one else in the squad that plays in the centre of midfield that if Jack started and you wanted to bring them on that can have the impact Jack's having. I really don't think there is, but because he's having such an impact on the team, he absolutely deserves to start, doesn't he? So it's really
it's
difficult.
a catch-22, isn't it? Because if he doesn't start, then he's got the opportunity to make the impact. But if he's getting frustrated, it's like, well, he should be starting because he's making this impact. It's the conundrum of being a football manager that I'm so glad I don't have to deal with.
Yeah, who's to say if we and it's ifs, buts, and maybes, isn't it? But if Jack Mullen did start yesterday, he did that in the first half. We went in at the halftime 1-0 up. I would fully expect us to go on and win the game. So, but also, it was a little bit bitty in the first half, a little bit messy overall. And if Jack was part of that, then we don't have the impact to bring on in the second half. So it's really difficult to decide. Michael Skibala knows best, but I fully understand Jack's frustration. But honestly, I would expect to see him start a game soon. I think he's earned that.
Yeah.
And then, it's up to him to then keep the shirt and make an impact on the game from the start of a game, like he does when he comes on. And if he can do that, then I think we've got a very, very, very exciting player on our hands, because we know how impactful he can be in short bursts at the moment. What a player he would be if he could have that threat for 90 minutes. That would massively elevate our midfield. I don't think I've seen him do it for 90 minutes ever, really. But oh my God, is he threatening at times?
Well, did he start against Barnsley?
Yeah. I mean, but has he been a real threat for a full 90-minute stretch of a game? Is what I'm kind of getting at. He's played 90 minutes before, but has he really kind of been a threatening player for that full time? And it's difficult, isn't it, to do it every single time you get the ball? But I really like Jack. I think he's a sort of player a little bit unique. We haven't got anyone else that does what he does from the centre of the pitch, and that's what you want. You want to have options. But I can absolutely understand why he's getting frustrated, but also massively credit his attitude to come on and make the impact he's making and channeling it in the right way. But let's just touch on the goal. We haven't actually discussed the goal itself yet, have we? So let's just touch on that. So he fed the ball to Rico, who really grew into the game, by the way, I thought yesterday. I think he's been easing himself back into kind of match fitness, hasn't he, over the last few weeks? And I think he really grew into this. I'm really not going to criticize him for their goal, because he was fouled, and I think his overall play was good. At times it felt a little bit, I don't want to use the word slow, that's not the right word, but delayed, I thought, maybe. But actually it's just him maybe allowing players to get forward or assess the situation, because he didn't get the ball away very often in terms of...
No, he didn't. That's a fair
passing.
point. That is a very fair point. I think that the thing that a couple of us picked up on when we were talking yesterday, it felt like he was almost a little bit afraid to take a man on, in the first half at least. I'm fully with you. I think that throughout the second half he really grew into the game, and we were starting to see what we know he's capable of. And I thought his link-up play with Sean Rowan was really good. I thought, it's starting to make more sense again down the left-hand side. And I just thought he was, really, really threatening in the second half. But yeah, let's go into the goal, because obviously Moylan wins. It's a bit of a loose ball in the middle of the pitch, and he wins the ball, plays it to Rico, and then by that point, Moylan scampered across the edge of the box. Rico plays it through, and then you've.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was just wanted to say something. Not necessarily just then, but I will jump in now. I just wanted a special mention to Sean Rowan, because he was on the overlap at that point. And
he pulls the man away, doesn't he?
Yeah, Gaz makes a point in his article to mention this, and I'm really pleased he did, because Sean's been doing this a lot more this season than he has previously. And Gaz was absolutely right to point out that you don't see many centre backs overlapping the wing back on the left hand or on either side of the pitch. But it's something that Sean has brought into his game. Clearly been instructed to do so, but knowing when to do it, because obviously it's quite a risky thing to do if it doesn't come off, because you're massively out of position then. But Sean's been brilliant at that. And one of two things happen. Sean either gets fed the ball, and he's got, on the whole, a pretty good delivery, certainly from those kind of more advanced positions. His crossing is really good. Or, as happened on Saturday, his run is effectively a decoy. It then drags the defender up, because the defender doesn't know whether to go to the ball, whether to mark Rowan, whether to mark Jack Moylan. One of those three options is going to be free at that time. And of course, what happens is Rico feeds it back into Moylan, who's picked to a lovely little spot, probably his favourite part of the pitch. Would you say that kind of just slightly inside of the touchline on that left hand side, and then he cuts inside and brilliant finish.
Yeah, it felt a bit like a carbon copy, didn't it, of the goal from Monday? Obviously, Monday went in the top corner, this one went in the bottom corner, but it felt like that was the spark that the game needed for us at that point. And I think from that point on, I know we said at half time, neither of us felt that we would go on to lose the game. I think at that point, you look at what's going on the pitch, you think, if there's going to be a team that wins this game, it's going to be us. There was no doubt in my mind at that point that we were going to hold on to at least a point. So, yeah, I mean, just fantastic finish. And I was just really chuffed for him again. Like, I was really pleased for him Monday. And the same thing yesterday. Like, he's clearly working incredibly hard. And he just kind of grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck, didn't he? And said, right, that's it. I'm gonna take us through this game, and I'm gonna get us there. And he scores a fantastic goal. Doesn't do tap-ins, I think was the wording that's been used quite a bit. But yeah, I say almost a carbon copy. And the defense then it felt like we were starting to push up the pitch and really get on Bristol Rovers, and we weren't giving them the space to hit my mic stand. We weren't giving them the space to allow them to do anything really, and it felt from that point on, like I said, if there was one team that was going to go on to win it, it was going to be us. But then maybe after another 10, 15 minutes or so, it started to just quieten down again a little bit, I thought.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. In once we scored the goal, again, didn't know exactly where it was going to come from. We got it from a little bit of magic, which was delightful, of course. But from that point, I thought there was only one team that was going to win, if there was going to be a winner. And I think probably everyone watching the game, everyone in the ground would have felt that, whichever side that you were supporting, because from that point, Bristol Rovers did seem to offer less and less as an attacking kind of standpoint, that they were kind of seem quite content to take the point and move on. I can never forgetting that for them, it's a good point, isn't it? You kind of don't think about it from an opposition perspective. Like, team in the playoffs comes and visits, you're not really flirting relegation, but you're struggling to find some consistency in your league season. You know, a home draw against a team that's a playoff chaser after, you know, a good chunk of the season's passed is a decent result. But I still don't see us as that, you know, from an opposition perspective. I see us, yeah, we could be there or thereabouts, but I'd never really think about it from like an opposition perspective that we're like a tough team to visit their ground. So, you know, normally, if you think you've got two similarly kind of matched teams, you'd expect the home team to then want to kind of rally and kind of go back on the front foot. But it didn't really. And I think at that point, until the end of the game, without really creating anything clear cut, we absolutely offered a hell of a lot more than Bristol Rovers did. If either team was going to be more likely to score, it would have been us. I think the statistics would add up to this quite a lot. You know, in the first half, we didn't have that many passes in the opposition half that were successful. Bristol Rovers had more than us. We had more than them in the second half. Overall possession stats was 39% for us in the first half, 54% in the second half. We had 9 shots in the second half, a couple on target. Only had 3 and 1 in the first half. So there was a big difference first half to second half. But to be honest, it wasn't even first half to second half. It was last half an hour, really. Where we really kind of tried to push the game. Again, maybe a little bit untidy at times, maybe a bit unlucky at times. Decent defending by Bristol Rovers at times. A couple of goal mouth scrambles, a couple of balls not quite dropping where you'd like them to. So we were threatening, but yeah, we didn't create anything clear cut.
I think there was one clear cut chance. So I think there was probably one when Draper's header was a decent save.
Oh, good point. Griffiths. Yeah, it was. Yeah. I suppose. When I think a clear cut chance, I kind of think one that should end up in a goal. Whereas I don't think that should end up in a goal. It was a good header, but he had to make it a good header, did Fred, and it was a decent save. Made a great decision with the head to go back across the keeper, by the way, because the keeper was wrong-footed. But Josh Griffiths does well to get across and make the save. But yeah, good point. But it was a good chance. I don't think it was a big chance as such, if you can separate the two. But ultimately, it finished. It did peter out right towards the end, didn't it? And it finished 1-1. And in all honesty,
can we briefly talk about Dariqua's final effort? Because that,
yeah, absolutely,
you could see what he was trying to do, and yeah, you could gets the ball, and I think it was mentioned by Matt Taylor actually in his post match where he said, "Look, the final effort of the game came from their set piece," and he thought they were being a bit sloppy with their set pieces, and it was proven by the fact that Dariqua gets the ball and goes over the halfway line. At which point, Josh Griffiths is basically having a nosebleed, coming to tackle him. And yeah, Dariqua obviously went to try and get it over him and into the net and missed the goal by about 10 yards. But,
minimum.
Worth a go.
Absolutely worth a go, yeah. And it's all we could do, isn't it, in that situation? And yeah, what if it goes in, though? If it goes in, we lose our minds, don't we? But alas, it did not. And we finished 1-1. And yeah, going into the game, I would have been hopeful of a win, but I would always be happy with a draw. And going away from home at any team, pretty much any team in League One, there's some away games that you kind of feel you'd be more likely to win than others. But I think particularly when you're a goal down at half time, I don't think any Lincoln City supporter should be disappointed with not losing, to be honest, away from home. We know that if the game had gone on another 15 minutes or so, we were probably going to be the most likely to score, but it didn't. So I saw enough for it to be satisfied without being over the moon.
Yeah, definitely. I think it wasn't poor in the first half. It was just a bit underwhelming, maybe. Like we weren't awful by any stretch of the imagination. I think Bristol Rovers did fairly well, and I just wanted to point out actually, I was really impressed with James Wilson. He's come on leaps and bounds since he was with us, but I thought he was just excellent yesterday. Anything that came in his path, he cleared up, and it was very similar to how we viewed Pordy O'Connor. I think like Pordy, as you said earlier, was just an absolute giant at the back. He was clearing everything. Was it 14 clearances?
14 clearances, yeah. So that's 5 more than anyone else on the pitch.
Yeah. And there was a moment when everybody, like I said, we kind of all held our breaths for a collective minute or two in the second half. I think Pordy went up for a header from a corner, and immediately, as soon as he came away from it, you could see him reach for his face and immediately like call the physio on, and you think, oh no, not again, not another central defensive injury. But thankfully, it seems like it was just a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I could be completely wrong here, but he was obviously fine. And that's obviously good. And if it was a genuine injury at the time and it was touch and go, then of course, really pleased that everything worked out okay. I think there might be a small potential chance that he's done it to get the game stopped in that moment, because Josh Griffiths had the ball in his hands. They were 2v1 on the counter attack if he had just released it. Paul did a little look over his shoulder, went down, waved over. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong, I could be being a massive skeptic here, and
just get your tinfoil hat out.
Yeah. It could be. I could be barking up the wrong tree, but because once the ball got in Griffiths' hands, I thought, oh no, they're on the counter attack here. Oh, it's okay, someone's down. Oh no, it's Pordy. And then you watch the replay. I just wonder. Now there may well have been something there that it was bloody sore.
I mean, when you look at it. Initially, I thought there's a clash of heads, and then when you watch it back, there's a bit of a clash, but there's also just an errant elbow that comes across. There's nothing malicious in it. You're not going to be standing there screaming for a red card, but he did get a bit of a whack. So I'm going to try and pour a bit of water on the conspiracy theory there.
That's fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. I'm not saying I'm right by any means. No, there was also a moment where Lewis went down briefly and he landed, held his knee, then he held his ankle, then he held his back. I was like, no.
Think,
but he got up and he was fine.
Yeah, I think that was because he knew he was going to get booked, because he just kicked the ball away. And he kicked the ball away and immediately realised what he'd done and went down. And I think he was maybe trying to get a bit of sympathy from the ref.
Fair enough. So we both have got some bit of a conspiracy theory there into potential injuries to our players. But ultimately, they both came through it okay, it would appear. And everyone leaves the game relatively satisfied, I think, from both sides.
Yeah, I don't think 1-1. I don't think a draw was an unfair result by any stretch. Like you say, if we'd have kept going for another 20 minutes, we'd have easily won it. But you look at the first half, we didn't do enough to go in level or better at the break. So yeah, I think it was maybe a bit harsh to go in 1-0 down, but we definitely didn't do enough to go in 1-0 up at halftime. And then I think it was a fair enough result given everything that had gone on during the 90. Skibala in his interview said that he wasn't happy with how we started, but obviously we grew into the game, showed the character and deserved the draw. I can't really argue with that. And then Matt Taylor was saying that he basically noticed that there was no space given by any side at any point. And it was going to have to be, like I said earlier, a mistake, a moment of brilliance, or a set piece that decided the game if there was going to be a winner. But I quite enjoyed Matt Taylor's interview. Actually, I thought he was nice, and he was very respectful towards us. I think he had a lot of praise for us. Wouldn't get drawn on anything in particular. It just seemed like it was, as we said at the top, A game of football that happened.
Indeed, yeah, and we managed to talk about it for 45 minutes. Should we talk about another game of football that's going to happen on Tuesday night?
Yeah. Let's look ahead briefly, because well, it's a game that should have happened a while ago, and unfortunately, the scheduling has meant that we are facing the Man City under-21s on Tuesday night, instead of a good few weeks ago when would probably have been a better time to play them from our current squad injury situation, maybe. But yeah, it's difficult to preview these games because, well, it's the under-21s side. We don't really know what to expect from them. Obviously, it was delayed because of their Carabao Cup game, I think, falling on the same night. So apparently, a club the size of Manchester City can't afford two different buses. I don't know. So yeah, do we think we're going to go out and try and get this game won? Because if we win, we go through to the next round of the competition.
Yeah, I think we absolutely want to win, definitely. And then the league table in this competition is actually quite interesting at the moment as well. It's quite tight. So do I think that we'll go out to try and win the game? Absolutely. But also, of course, expect to see quite a bit of rotation. However, I would hope that rotation would still allow us to have a strong enough side out to win said game. I think we can speculate about who's going to play up front. It could be Freddie and Bailey if Rob Street is fit and not injured as rumoured in the chat earlier. Potentially, it's a good opportunity for him to play. Mm-hmm. He hasn't had a lot of minutes. Midfield has got lots of options. Wing back has got a hell of a lot of options. Centre back doesn't. So MJ Kimura came on in this competition briefly towards the end against Grimsby. I'm wondering if it's an opportunity for him to get some minutes as well. But again, we want to win the game, don't we? So it's a difficult risk. So I actually think team selection will be genuinely interesting here.
Let's try and predict it then.
Okay.
Let's try and see who we think is going to start. Obviously, we'll start from the top and we'll work our way back because the defensive one is probably the conundrum, isn't it? So up top, I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I think if Rob Street is indeed fit, I think it would make sense to start him and see what he's about, give him a bit of a chance. Do you start Bailey in a competition like this?
I would start Fred in this.
Yeah,
mainly because he's our player, needs minutes. Also, he could absolutely bully the opposition.
I was going to come on to I was going to say pretty much the same.
Obviously, one eye has to be on. We want to win the game here, and that could be a real mismatch there with Fred's physicality against. We're not playing against kids as such, but very young, not yet developed professionals. Some of them who are not, inexperienced, who are not necessarily going to get. Not all of them are going to go and make it. Now, I remember when we played against Chelsea, albeit in the semi-finals, you look at that team sheet of Chelsea in that game, and then look at the careers. A lot of those have gone on to have, almost all of them have gone on to play at a good level. But it's not guaranteed. But I also wouldn't want to kind of detract too much from this because we're not playing against Wolves under-21s here. We're playing against Manchester City under-21s. Mm-hmm. So, the quality of their under-21s is still going to be high. But I do think that physical mismatch that Fred would potentially provide could be a bit of a mismatch there. So yeah, I'm going to say Rob Street and Freddie to start, but Bailey being the first sub probably to come on of those two.
Mm-hmm. Midfield then. So obviously out at the moment, Harry has listed in here current injured players, potentially Street, but then we've got Walker, Bayliss, Arahan, Jackson, and Hamer. So of the midfield, who do we go with? Because again, you've got the midfield three with Jeffries, McGrandles, and Hamilton starting on Saturday. I don't really see all three of them playing a full 90 on Tuesday. But then who do you bring in their place?
I mean, obviously, depends on Ethan
JJ could
Arahan's
start.
fitness.
Well,
'cause
yeah, that's
he's
true.
close. I wonder, do we actually play Ethan to get him some minutes here? If obviously don't want to risk it, but if he is fully ready to go, it's a nice way of easing some competitive minutes into him without having to do it in a league game. So if fit, I would start Ethan Arahan. JJ McKinnon, I think, is almost guaranteed to start in this one. It's then who else plays? I don't know. To be honest, like Jack Moylan, you kind of think, well, he deserves to start, but also,
Does he
I'd
deserve to start in
happily,
a league game? Is the
yeah,
question.
I'd actually probably prefer him to be on the bench in this, come on, and then start on Saturday against Exeter. I think that's
100%.
something that's probably deserved and justified of his recent performances. Dom Jeffries has been incredibly consistent, yet I still don't see him as a first name on the team sheet in the centre midfield, which is really harsh, probably because he's played in the wide areas as well. But I think he's absolutely deserving there. Ethan Hamilton, more minutes in the legs, or does he need a rest because of playing, a 90 on, or almost 90 on? Did he come off for JJ? I can't remember. He did, didn't he? He came off for JJ late Saturday. So the other one, I really don't know. Wing back, I expected a Duffy to start because he was on the bench again at the weekend.
Skibala did say that he was only. Skibala did say that if Duffy came on, he would only get about 20 minutes.
Okay,
on
so
Saturday,
maybe he'll come on.
Yeah,
on.
I'd probably
Tuesday
come on
then.
the second half.
Yeah, maybe for Saxon early then.
Mm-hmm.
And then the centre backs would be quite interesting. I think Pordy will start because captain start him in the middle. There's the potential for Tendai to play right centre back, isn't there? And there's also potential, maybe, of MJ to come in. Of course, we're forgetting Oisin Gallagher as well, who might play in that holding role. Thinking about it, he's eligible to play, isn't he?
Is he still eligible to come back and play in these games?
Yeah, him and MJ are.
Oh, okay, cool. That puts another, a good wrinkle in it then.
And then left centre back, I imagine either Sean or if Duffy does start, maybe Saxon plays left centre. It depends how rotated we want to be, doesn't it? I think the good thing is we've got options. I would not expect to see Lewis Montfort in the squad. I don't think there's any need to risk him. I think we patch ourselves up around him and make sure he's ready and raring to go for Saturday. And I expect Jimmy Parlington to play in goal.
Mm-hmm. I can't argue too much with that. And again, I think at the minute it's like you say, it's almost square pegs round holes, particularly across the back. But
yeah, just the back line, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but it almost feels like the same old story, doesn't it? When you've just got, oh, cool, right, we're Lincoln have been hit by an injury crisis. It's not quite a crisis just yet.
Because we've got the players to be able to put a first team out and a really competitive first team out. It's just we don't have any more depth to be. That's the thing. But that's the reason you have depth in the first place is for this sort of situation. So
yeah.
I mean, it's not the end of the world.
No, do you think we'll see the bench maybe filled out with a few of the under 18s? Maybe, obviously, we saw. Zane, come on.
Zane Okori, Charlie Parks, and Denny Oliver are on the bench as well, weren't they, against Cheshire? But one thing in the FA Cup game is you were able to name 9 substitutes.
Right.
So, okay. There won't be as much room on the bench. It's difficult, isn't it? Because you think, do you massively rotate the team and in the expectation that there's enough on the pitch to get the win? But if it's not going to plan, you have your big hitters on the bench ready to come on and almost secure it. Or do you play a semi-strong, kind of semi-rotated side with a lot of the fringe players on the bench and or youth ones? I think that's where we don't get paid the big bucks, and Mr. Skibala does. Oh, I don't know what his salary is, of course, but he certainly gets paid a lot more to do with football than we do.
You're getting paid?
So we'll see. No, that's the point. So it'll be really interesting. But I think league table, I think let's just touch on this, because what's annoying about this competition is that you have different match days where different games are going on, and some teams have played 2, some teams haven't played yet, some teams have played 1. As it stands for us, actually, all teams have played 2 games as it stands right now. The team in 4th, Grimsby, are on 1 point. Us and Man City are both on 3 points, and Chesterfield are top on 5. Top 2 go through, of course. So if we win, we're through. Simple as that, because Grimsby can't catch us. If we draw, we'll be on 4 points. But then, of course, there's a stupid penalty shootout at the end of a draw. for the extra point. So if it's a draw, depending on who wins out of us and Man City in that penalty shootout would actually elevate us in the table. And then it would be goal difference depending on what Grimsby do against Chesterfield. So it all gets a bit weird, to be honest. I really dislike the penalty shootouts. It's stupid.
Yeah, it's daft, isn't it?
Competition. I know. I understand the reasons that people do. I don't mind competition. I hate the stupid penalty shootout because that really devalues the seriousness of it for me. There's nothing wrong with a flipping draw. A draw's a draw.
It feels very American, doesn't it? It's like we have to have a winner.
Yeah, but I just hate the fact that you get an extra point for it. But the silly thing is that this situation, that penalty shootout does mean something if it's a draw at the end of this game, but it also doesn't guarantee anyone passage until we know what happens with Grimsby. Because goal difference, Chesterfield are currently +1. Us and Man City have currently got a 0 goal difference, and Grimsby are -1. So if we draw this and we win on pens, let's say, we'll have 5 points as well. Oh, in fact, that'll be fine. Ignore me. I can't count. I can't count at all. Grimsby can't go through because, if one of us and Man City will win or we'll draw and one of them will win the penalty shootout, in which case Grimsby can't catch them. So everything I just said is rubbish. It's all down to this game. If we win, we're through. If we draw and win the penalty shootout, we're through. If we don't, we're out. So I'd like us to win because I quite like the competition as a way of getting minutes into those fringe players, blooding some youngsters. We know the benefit it's given a lot of young players in the past. So as much as I don't like the Premier League teams being there, I quite like the competition for that reason. So it'd be nice to have another game or two in it, wouldn't it?
From that perspective, yes. I wonder. I haven't really seen too much of the other groups. I don't know whether there's any of the under 21 teams that are actually going to be making it out of the groups at this point.
Honestly, I haven't checked. Don't know. I probably should have done it before we started, but as much as I like the competition for our benefit in terms of the squad, I don't really pay a lot of attention to what's happening in the wider part of the competition. Does anybody?
No. So Group A, Everton can't qualify. Group B, Wolves can't qualify. Group C, Forest can. D, Villa are in second and they can. Group E, Liverpool can't. Group F. So it looks like there's maybe a couple, but I don't really know.
So Man United are
second.
Yeah, depending on what they do against Huddersfield, they'll do okay. Liverpool can't. Yeah, you say this. There's only a couple. I dislike the fact that they're in it, but we wouldn't get the financial benefit of the competition if they weren't in it.
Yep.
There's 10 grand on the line for it. I'd be quite nice to have 10 grand in the coffers. It'd be quite nice to blood some youngsters at the same time. If all things go as planned, players that aren't getting many minutes will get valuable minutes. We'll get some money in the bank, and we'll knock a Premier League team out. So if we win, all those three things happen, I think it's been a good night for all involved. 7 o'clock kickoff, worth remembering.
Oh yeah, well. So I always forget that.
For these. So yeah, if you're going to go, I'll go. I'm a sucker for football, so I'll go and watch these. But need to get there early.
Indeed. So I've just seen that Arsenal are top of their group in theirs, and it just looks like they're going in and steamrolling everybody. So yeah. So yeah, cool. Right. That is probably a good spot to wrap up the podcast. And as Andy says, of course, it is good money in the competition. So we'll see what happens on Tuesday. I don't think there's anything else that is particularly pressing for us this week in terms of Lincoln City. Oh, your finger is up.
It is.
That was a phrasing.
Yes, it was. Gary and I are doing the Fantasy EFL, as I'm sure lots of people that are listening are doing. If you're not aware, Gaz and I do a little YouTube show weekly. Without wanting to give too much away, I won again this week. But also, I started 2 weeks behind, and I have just overtaken Gary in the overall points. As much as that doesn't count for our little competition, it is quite satisfying to catch him up in that. But we're having a lot of fun doing it. If anyone is doing Fantasy EFL. Do check that out. But also would like to get guests on. So talk about your team, just to talk about your experience with it. Just, it's just nice to get kind of other people's voices. That includes you, of course, Ben, as well, because I think you're ahead of both of us, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I'm just checking the league. At the moment, I've dropped down this week to 35th in the Stacey West League. But
it's all getting tight then between us three. Charlie Beeston, of course, is way down the bottom because apparently
he forgot his password.
Yeah, something along those lines. I reckon that's just an excuse. But just like to let everyone know, if you weren't aware that we're doing the show and you're taking interest in the Fantasy EFL, do check that out on YouTube and get in touch if you'd like to come on the show.
Just looking at this now, we have Substandard Liège.
Yes.
On you've got 82 points this week.
I have.
Did you have Mr. Poco in your team by any chance?
No, I wasn't allowed. So me and Gary set some rules this week. So we were not allowed to spend any more than a total of what we call 10%. So on the website, it's really great. It tells you what percentage of the player base, is in us kind of punters that are playing the game, have selected each player in their team that week. So we were not allowed to select the players that have been selected by lots of other people. We had to try and think outside the box because we just wanted to keep it interesting, so we weren't picking the same players every week. So I would have had Poco in it because I selected him a lot this season and he's scored a lot of points. Obviously scored shitloads.
Got a hat trick. If I'd had him
as
as my captain, as I did have the other week, I would have been so happy this week. But no, as it stands, I came away with 48 points this week. So you've beaten me by 34 points.
Wonderful.
On the week. However, I'm still 11 points ahead of you, and I'm clinging on to that like a man on a life raft from a sinking ship.
Brilliant. It's good fun though. I really like Fantasy EFL just generally because I'm sure like loads of people that are listening used to do the Premier League one. Took it seriously for a couple of seasons, and then if you get off to a bad start, you kind of lose interest, don't you? And I found myself doing the same thing over and over again and picking my team, spending far too much time on it, having a terrible first week, hating the team I'd picked, changing every single player using that wild card thing that you get once or twice a year, hating the team again a second time round and then never touching it for the rest of the season. But the Fantasy EFL is brilliant because you can change your team every week. It's not just loaded with like attacking metrics like defenders score points for clearances and tackles, midfielders get key passes, interceptions, as well as the obvious goals and assists and clean sheets.
Your highest scorer this week was a defender.
You know what? I think that's a trend a lot across the game. A lot of the higher scoring players are defenders. Anyway, enough on Fantasy EFL, but just wanted to plug that really because I won, and it's nice to kind of mention that. But also,
you won,
it's really good fun.
You won, and you're not going to get the bite back that you normally do with Gary.
Correct.
Well, look, there we go. That's going to do us for episode number 331 of the Stacey West podcast. Stay tuned, and we will see you on Wednesday when we will be probably dissecting some of the Manchester City result and then looking ahead to Exeter City next weekend. So until then, up the Imps.
Up the Imps.